Hi, my name is Mike Colaw, the lead pastor at Trinity Church in Indianapolis. I am so excited about this next series. Our mission, we really believe, is to love God, love others, and help others know and love God. One of the primary ways that we are executing the last part of that is by intentionally raising up the next generation of leaders. So over the course of the next couple of weeks, we are going to be bringing in our residents and interns and letting them share with you what God has put on their heart, their calling to ultimately go out and lead churches around the world. So join us as we do more than just minister to the people here, but we help prepare the people here to go and change the world. Good morning. Well, I'll try that again. Good morning. It is good to see you all. Again, my name is Mike Colaw. I'm the lead pastor of Trinity Church, and it is an honor to get to be here with you all this morning over at the East Fishers location. Man, God has been doing some good things. It's been a crazy last couple of days. I've had a number of weddings this weekend, and so getting people hitched is always an interesting journey. So yeah, I love it though, and it's so neat. One of my favorite things about being a pastor. It is true when you kind of first get into this, especially those that feel called to ministry, they got that little nerdy edge to them, which I do. I like to study. I mean, my parents have been college professors, and so like I like to learn, I like to study, I like to grow, I like to have my hands in that. But one of the things that you really begin to fall in love with is the people. And weddings are a really great way just to be able to play one of those mile marker, roles in somebody's life. And so it's just been awesome the last couple of days being with some amazing families and celebrating this new stage in life for them. Let's pray and we're going to jump in. Father, I thank you so much for your grace and mercy. I want to take a moment and I just want to pause, pray for peace. Many of us, even today, right here, Lord, our minds are racing with activities, with struggles, with frustration, with personal issues, with health issues, with financial issues. And we lack peace. I pray that even though this sermon is more missional in that we are going to explain what we're going to be doing for the next number of weeks, I do pray that your Spirit would move and those that need a fresh voice from you could hear it. In every illustration, in every scripture that's read, in the stories that are shared, Lord, I pray that your Spirit would take them deep into hearts. Let me do nothing more than magnify your word and make you ever more known and ever more loved. In your name, amen. So over this last year, I like to learn and grow, and I have 4 children, as you know, and my youngest is 2. So about 2 years ago, I was applying for doctoral programs. I wanted to start my doctoral work. And I got accepted into a school, was pretty excited, getting ready to start that journey. And we found out we were pregnant with number 4 in the lineup. So my now 2-year-old daughter broke my doctoral program, so hopefully I'll be able to get back to that at some point. And so internally, I thought, man, I still want to grow. I still want to keep learning. How can I do that? So I've taken like single classes here and there. I did one like Roman history, and I love doing sociology and psychology. And it's fun just to kind of learn and grow one chunk at a time, a class at a time. But this last year in particular, I decided there's 2 fronts I really want to do my best to continue to move forward on. One of them is leadership. And so I connected with a guy by the name of Ken Murphy at Cypress Wesleyan Church in Columbus, Ohio. He's an amazing leader. They're further along than us with campuses and locations and missionaries and all kinds of stuff. So been working with him directly. He's been a great guy. And then the second thing that I've been doing is I decided I wanted to learn and grow even more in my ability to communicate as a leader. And so I know a lot of you guys know him, Dr. Lenny Lichetti from Wesley Seminary. Anybody know him? And yeah, we got a few out there. Lenny is awesome guy. Dr. Lichetti is brilliant. He's got a great heart. And so part of this last year, he has been doing coaching with me. So this is kind of a weird thing to think about now that I'm saying it, but he'll watch a sermon and then tear it apart and call me on the phone and let me know what he didn't like. No, I'm just kidding. It wasn't just that. But call me on the phone and say, hey, here are the things that are going well. I'd like you to consider this, think about this. So he's been coaching me, walking me through this. I just finished it 2 weeks ago, whenever it was. And it was awesome going through that process. And one of the things that he encouraged me to do, this is kind of interesting. He said, as a theologian, I got the nerdy part down okay. He said, I want you to learn to be an even better storyteller. And I don't know that I'm necessarily bad as a storyteller, but I could improve for sure. And so he assigned, boy, I wish I would have heard this when I was like in high school. He assigned to me to read fiction books. Let that sink in. Paying money, get coaching, and his assignment is read fiction books. Okay, that's cool. So I went back to some of the stuff, and there were a number of different pieces of literature that I went through, but I went back, and one of the ones that I went through, series that I went through, is C.S. Lewis's stuff. Any Lewis fans? Of course I'm going to go through Lewis. He's one of my favorites. And so I did like parts of the Chronicles of Narnia, I did The Last Battle again, enjoyed those books. But I also went through, and I'd read these years ago, C.S. Lewis has a trilogy of books that he wrote to adults. Anybody here ever read those? So Paralandra, it ends with That Hideous Strength. We got a couple people. Yeah, there's only a few. Even in the other services, I probably only came across like 10 people total out of all the people that go to our campuses that have actually read the adult ones, the ones that were written for adults and adult audience. And man, those were so powerful. And as I was going through the adult books, those are books that he wrote for an adult audience, as I was going through them, all of a sudden it hit me. He makes such a massive deal about people who can see beauty. About people who can see beauty. In fact, in his books, and he does this so well, not even in his nonfiction, but in his fiction literature, painting the way this plays out with people. Very few people on this planet, Lewis makes the case, through fiction and nonfiction literature, have the ability to actually see beauty. See, most of us on this planet are really good at seeing what doesn't work or what's broken. And very few of us have the ability to see what's beautiful. Think about it for a moment. When you watch the news, I love the way my kid said this a few years ago. We were riding in the car, and one of my kids is like, they should just call the news bad news, because that's all it ever is, right? It's like bad news. It's true. And in that, it's also true, like we want to blame the news or the newscasters or news. We got to be careful. We have reporters that go to some of our campuses, right, from even local stations. But we want to blame them for always delivering the bad stuff. But do you know who the audience is that hungers after it? It's us. We're the machine that they keep feeding. There are positive news agency groups, blogs, authors, little things that are out there, and nobody reads them. We feed the broken. Let's drill it down in even more. Think about it. The next time you go out, or even the last time that you went out and you walked through your yard, around, outside, checking it out, I bet, now I'm a good Wesleyan boy, I don't actually bet, but if I did, I bet that you walked around and you noticed all the things that needed to be fixed. In fact, Lewis makes the case that the older we get, the more we become obsessed with seeing what's broken. And even our education system teaches us to hyper-focus on what's broken. Now listen, that's not always bad, because we do want to fix things, we do want to improve them, but we become masters at this and really poor at seeing the beauty. Every coach, every counselor, every personal trainer, they're all obsessed with looking at what's broken and trying to tinker with it and fix it. Again, that's not always bad, but it's very rare to find people who can see beauty too. In fact, let me ask it like this. Do you, this is maybe a clear way to say it, do you bring out the beauty, or do you only magnify the broken? Do you? Do you bring out the beauty, or do you only magnify what's broken? Because the truth is, most of us on this planet, I think Lewis is right, most of us on this planet, we are excellent at seeing what's broken, at magnifying what's broken, at hyper-focusing on the things that we don't like, that don't work, that aren't going well. And very few people can see what's beautiful. In fact, Lewis also says that the younger we are, the better we are at seeing what's beautiful, and the older we get, we lean even more negative. I can give you an example of my own life and home. So in our yard, we are at war with dandelions. And we have been for a while. And I walk outside, thanks to culture, pressure, growing up, neighbors, expectations. I walk outside and I see the weeds in my yard. Notice the term I use, weeds in my yard. And I have to come up with strategies to beat them because I want to win. And I was walking, actually it's with Emma, I was walking with Emma, this is like a year or two ago, the first time she did this, and with my daughter, and she looks out there, and she sees the dandelion, and she bends down, looks at it, and she goes, Daddy, they're so beautiful. Do you only magnify what's broken, or can you see what's beautiful too? Very few people can do that. I want to pause on that question. I'm going to come back to it in a few minutes. So stay there, let that sit. I'm going to shift gears. I'm going to pull a couple of ideas together in a little while. The next thing I want to share with you is this, and this, many of you probably won't even believe me, and that's okay. There are really only a couple of times in my life where I really feel like God spoke to me. I mean, don't hear me wrong. I think that God speaks to me like through His Word when I'm doing devotions. I feel like God, touches my heart through even conversations with other people, personal prayer. I think the Lord speaks to me in some of these really cool, regular ways. But there are really only a couple times where I feel like God really grabbed me by the collar and said, "Hey, I love you. Listen, this is a big deal," and spoke to me. One of them, I'm going to share one of them with you today. It's about 15 years ago. I wrestled with my call to ministry, started off exercise science. You guys know my story. Started off exercise science, journeying down that road. God really woke me up, called me into ministry. Started in the ministry journey, did philosophy and religion at OW, then went on to grad school later on, did Wesley Seminary. But in that process, in feeling called to ministry, I remember I was doing my devotions, and a lot of people have a life verse. I bet you do too. And when you get a life verse, it's like, what are you supposed to do? I mean, now with the young adult ministry for a long time, it's like, I got to look for the Bible to find a life verse, because what I really want is a tattoo, and I'm just trying to figure out a way to give myself a reason to get a tattoo. And so, I've actually had people come to me and go, "Hey, can you help me find a life verse?" Well, what do you want to do with it? I'm going to get a huge, shoulder, tattoo on my arm. So at the end of the game, there after that tattoo, and the verse was just a way to get there. Now, I think, for me, I didn't look for my life verse. I really do believe God brought it to me. I was doing my devotions about 15, 16 years ago, maybe a little bit more than that. Normal, nothing big. Reading through the opening work of Luke, leading into the coming of Christ. And as I was reading about John the Baptist, I kid you not, and some of you won't believe me, and that's okay. As I was coming forward, I was reading through the scripture, nothing big, nothing going on. All of a sudden, all the lights in the house go out. Lightning strikes near our house, thunder hits, the whole thing shakes, the whole house shakes. Some of you won't believe me, that's fine. The whole house shakes. I remember looking up, and it's hard to know whether it was even audible or not, but it was so prominent in my mind and heart, I felt like the Lord said, "Look back down, you're going to give your life to what you just read." And I looked back down at the Bible that I was reading, and it was Luke 1:17, an obscure passage. I've seen no tattoos of it. Luke 1:17, a really obscure passage. And I went down and I read it again. "He will come in the spirit and power of Elijah, bring hearts of the fathers to the children, the disobedient to the wisdom of the righteous, to make ready people prepared for the Lord." And I read that scripture again, and it was like God said, "You will give the rest of your life to that verse. Everything that you do, all your time, all your energy, wealth, money, resources, everything that I bring to you, you're going to put into that conduit." And I remember getting up. In fact, my wife came out. She's in the other room. She was like, "What just happened?" I was like, "I think God spoke to me." I walked outside, and it wasn't storming outside. Nothing. The lights were back on in the house now. It was a crazy, crazy, miraculous moment for me. So I didn't go looking for my life verse. I really feel like God just seared it into my soul and said, "This is what you're going to do. Deal with it right now." God is gentle and loving. That's kind. I get all that, but I do think you have a Paul to Saul moment every once in a while too. So I want to walk you through Luke 1. I'm going to begin with verse 13 and read through verse 17. It says this: "But the angel of the Lord said to him," so this is backing up just a little bit before my life verse, "Do not be afraid, Zechariah, for your prayer has been heard." I want to pause there for just a moment. Angel appears, and his first statement, and this is true all over the Bible, is what? Do not over and over again in the Bible, when an angel appears, it's like, do not be afraid. So in your brain, when you think of like God actually interacting with you, at least when the angels, anglos, the messengers show up, it's not like, poof, a little angel on the side. It's like, hey, what's up, dude? Hey, you got to listen to this. I mean, it's in a big enough way that it grabs your attention. Now, there's another part to this that you need to remember as you look at the history of it. This is the time, so you have to remember, John the Baptist is the last of the Old Testament prophets. So in the beginning of the New Testament is the end of the Old Testament. In this story with his dad, Zechariah, it has been 400 years since God has spoken to humanity in a profound public way. It's been a long time. And after 400 years of silence from heaven, you know what happens to faith like that? I mean, the metaphysical, beyond the reality, massive hope for things beyond this world. What happens is myth turns into legend. In fact, Josephus and some of the other historical writers, historians that were not even biblical or even Christian. So Roman historians, Josephus and Tacitus and some of the others, they write about Jewish religious leaders. And some of the Jewish religious leaders, the Sadducees in particular, they had already begun to cease to believe it to be real. After 400 years of silence, myth turns into legend. The Sadducees, some of the historians write, they had already begun to maybe disbelieve that there was even an afterlife or that the soul was even eternal. They did still believe that religion was good for people, but after that long of quiet from heaven, doubt begins to seep in. Listen, some of you today, it has been so long since you've heard from God. It's not that you're against it, but it's like myth has turned into legend. So the angel appears to Zechariah after all this silence. I like him because he's just kind of like a country pastor guy. Zechariah, who is John's dad, will be, continuing in verse 13, "For your prayer has been heard, and your wife Elizabeth will bear you a son, and you shall call his name John. And you will have joy and gladness, and many will rejoice at his birth. For he will be great before the Lord, and he must not drink wine or strong drink." He's a good Wesleyan kid. "And he will be filled with the Holy Spirit, even from his mother's womb. And he will turn many of the children of Israel to the Lord their God. And he will go before him in the spirit power of Elijah, to turn the hearts of the fathers to the children, the disobedient to the wisdom of the just, to make ready for the Lord a people prepared." That's the ESV version. Who is John the Baptist? So this son, after all these years of silence, God finally speaks. People aren't even necessarily believing it to be true. In fact, Zechariah, they evened out, so much so that God and the angels does a miracle for them to even prove that it was real. I mean, he's probably wondering up there, was that like bad soup from last night? Was this even real? So who was John that rolls around? By the time John comes in, I'm going to go through these pretty quick. John is the last, his son John is the last of the Old Testament prophets, John the Baptist. John is, so in the New Testament actually begins, the New Covenant begins at the end of John's story, Jesus' life. So the Old Testament technically ends at the beginning of the Gospels. John is the last of the Old Testament prophets. John is the first follower of Jesus Christ. John, he's a little crazy compared to people of his day. He ate locusts and wild honey and wore camel's hair. Right? So, I don't know, this is totally, maybe even a little sacrilegious, I'm not sure, but like when I imagine it in my mind, I see kind of like this crazy guy, like a Winnie the Pooh, bucket, eating honey and locusts with, big dreadlocks and hair. I don't know how it all went down. Sorry if that's not quite right. But in there, John the Baptist, right, the truth is, this dude was different than the rest of the people. And somehow, he was still so highly anointed that people in droves came out to him, even highly educated people, Romans with power, influential politically, influential education, and influential even in religion. Everybody came out to hear John. Something about this guy was uniquely powerful, and it drew people in droves. And the beauty of this is he was so awkward in some ways that it is awesome. It is only the hand of God that could have made his ministry so significant. Listen, it is in your weakness oftentimes that the beauty of God is seen clearest. John's task was simply this, his primary purpose on this planet, to prepare people for the coming of Christ. So how did John prepare people for the coming of Christ? This is my life verse. What I'm going to give my life to, what I have given my life to. It's this. Reunite families. Reunite families. So think of it this way. Think legacy. Think next generation. So it was a little weird, honestly, to be like 25, 24 years old. And the first command I feel from God for my life is to already be preparing to hand the baton off to the next generation. I remember sitting there thinking, I'm the next generation. Like, who's handing this off to me? And I felt like the Lord said, nope, from day one, one of your primary jobs is raise up next generation leaders, next generation leaders, next generation leaders. And for me, that began in youth ministry. And I literally had the opportunity to work with thousands of students over the course of the years that I did youth work. Next generation, next generation, next generation. I still believe that to be true. So reunite families, think legacy, think next generation. 2 is this. Teach people who are lost the ways of truth, spiritual conversion. I mean, proclaim the hope and love of Jesus Christ to those that need it. Share it. The third thing that God gave me was this. Prepare the bride, God's people, for the arrival of the groom, Jesus, growing in faith. I get that for many of us, even many of you sitting in the church today, even many of you that have been in church year after year after year, even for you, it seems surreal and almost awkward, myth into legend, that God will actually come back. And all that we know, all that is ordered the way that we know it, is going to come to an end. Civil structures. All of this is going to stop, and a new system is going to come into play. And one of the primary things that I believe God has called me to do in this will be the righteous, make ready people, prepare for the Lord, prepare the bride. One of the primary things I think God has called me to do is to help make you spiritually radiant. And so many of us are giving all of our time, our energy, our money, our talent, so many of us are giving so much of ourselves to things that will not last. You're investing all of who you are into something that will absolutely come to an end and pass away. And one of the primary calls in my heart is to call out of you that real, true, transcendent, metaphysical spirituality and help make it radiant and glorious. I want you to be beautiful, spiritually beautiful. So where are we going with this next series? Over the next 6 weeks, our church staff will be working on some big projects. And big projects probably isn't even a big enough way to say it. We really are going to begin to unpack, remake Trinity Church. God has been good to us. Yes, we have some really cool things around the corner. We've got the NEI. We've got 3 services on Sunday morning there. We're playing around with doing some other stuff I can't share quite yet. Even at that location, we got stuff that's happening here. We have the downtown ministry that's going really well. And then Marcus and Andy, who you're going to hear from Andy next week. He'll be teaching. I think it's next week. Andy will be here next week teaching. Him and Marcus are going to be the campus pastors for our 4th location, which will be on IUPUI's campus. So we got all these great things that are happening. Praise the Lord that all of that has taken place. But I still, in the gut of my heart, the deep down inside of me, I feel like there is something so much more. And we're going to begin to unpack that with the team over the next few weeks. So we have some big projects. I honestly think this next year will be one of the most important years of our story. I'm going to be working on 3 primary things over this next 6 weeks. You're going to be hearing from some amazing young leaders, our next generation of leaders, our residents, our interns, and then I'm going to be doing even some retreats with the team to help prepare for this next season of Trinity Church. Number 1 is this, next generation. I fully believe we will become a sending agency for young pastors. I want all the young talent. And I want to prepare them to go out and lead dynamic ministries of their own that God has called them to. Next generation. I want to do everything that I can to call out those that feel the call to ministry in their heart. Even last week, this is just an opening sermon. even last week we finished, and one of our young adults came up after one of the services at the last campus in tears, who graduated with a degree in media, walked up to me and said, God's called me into ministry, and I've been fighting it. And so I'm going to meet with him this next week to help readjust his course, call to ministry. I think God is going to raise up an army of young leaders, and I cannot wait for us to be an incredible sending agency for them. And so over the course of the next 6 weeks, we can't have all of our residents and interns. We already have too many. But over the next 6 weeks, you're going to hear from at least 6 of them, or 6 of them are lined up to come through. And you're going to hear the call of God in each of their hearts as they come through. So I'm excited for you to get to hear that, the next generation. The next thing that's going to happen is this. With God's grace, we will be developing a plan to help plant. We are going to help plant a church. I'm going to do everything I can to pull this off, to help plant a church every year from here on out. And a lot of this is going to be partnering with people that feel called to ministry, and even partnering with the Greater Wesleyan Church to do it. And so our first project is going to be in Muncie, Indiana, with a man who you will meet named Mike Hewitt. And so he'll be coming through in a little while. God has called him to this area. He feels called to Muncie. Anybody here with connections to Muncie? All right, you know that it'll be good to get some ministries going there. I say that with love, right? Is that the appropriate way to do it? I'm looking at it. Is that okay? Yeah, I'm getting some nods. All right, that's all right. And so with this, I'm so excited. Our goal is to come alongside and at least help to get, so not just will we be raising up leaders, sending them out from here, but we want to be teaming up with church plants and helping them go too. So we're going to carve it out. So it's true. I mean, with things like giving, when you give to this church, you help us send missionaries like the Scots around the world, and you also help us send out missionaries literally across the state of Indiana, and you help us raise up leaders for Christianity even within this own system. I mean, we want to become an engine that is on and cranking out next generation leaders. We are a sending agency. In fact, in the deep part of my heart, I am becoming more and more and more obsessed, not with our capacity to draw people in, but with our capacity to send people out. Can we make an army of people that can bring this hope to the world? The third thing is going to be this, growing in faith. Over the course of the next few weeks, I'm going to be getting together with different groups. We're going to do a couple of different retreats for the team. So I've got some like organizational stuff, the guts of the ministry, how does that work, structures, tiers, hierarchy, campus pastors, how all that is going to work. And then we're going to be getting away talking about how is this, next generation stuff going to happen? Are we going to put together we are going to put together an even better plan for raising them up. And then we're going to get together and even talk about this next year of sermons. So this next year, prepare the bride for the coming of Jesus Christ. We want to make you spiritually radiant. We're going to be working our way through the book of John this next year. So I'm going to be getting together with our worship arts team. Kristen will be at some of this. And Matthew Hines will be at some of these meetings. Where we're going to be planning out the next year of sermons. By the time we get through next year this time, we want you to be like college experts in the book of John. Everything that we can to draw you into the guts and the depth of that beautiful work of art. The book of John. What does that mean? What's in it? My first round, so I did a personal study through the book of John. I already finished it. In my personal study through the book of John, I went back and I put together all my notes in a document. I gave them to my wife. I thought, hey, can you just read through these? Maybe I can do something. And Leslie, my wife, was like, Mike, there are over 20,000 words already. I've already written over 20,000 words and notes on the book of John. I am so ready to do this, just in my personal study. And now I'm getting ready to start it in a corporate group with some other scholars. So I've got a PhD in philosophy guy I'm going to read through the book of John with. I've got an engineer that I'm reading through the book of John with. I've got all these different guys that I'm going to be studying the book of John with, now in a corporate setting, getting ready for the fall when we dive into the guts of this book. I'm telling you, I'm going to do my very, very best to make sure that our church brings you the beautiful, rich depth of the book of John. And we're going to be working on that over the course of the next number of weeks, too, as we're spending time getting away. I'm going to invite Kristen up, and we're going to be done. The question that I have for you is, how can you help? Okay, so how can you help? What can you do to continue to help us over the course of this next series, even preparing for the fall? Here we go. Our vision is really big. Our vision is really big. From helping rescue children from slavery around the world. Remember last year when we did some of that? It was awesome to be a part of that. Our church is already directly connected with them, even ex-military people, Destiny Rescue, those wonderful programs. We have already been a part of. I just got another text from the rescue team, underground rescue team, that pulls people out of the sex slave trade, children out of it. We have already rescued over 20 kids, rescued them out of brothels, and brought them into places where they can learn a trade and grow in wisdom and prepare to have a good life. From things like that to missionaries around the world, like the Scots who visited with you today, to raising up leaders that we will send out, to launching new campuses, to helping plant churches. Listen, our vision is massive. And I cannot help it. I mean, I get it. I started off exercise science. I got a coach inside of me. I'm a driven man. I am on mission to get these things rolling. And I cannot wait. I'm so excited about what has happened, but I cannot wait to see what's coming down the pipeline. And I believe that some of you will even play massive roles in this. I think God is going to call some of you out, maybe even into ministry. Maybe not full-time, but helping out in ministry. I believe that God's going to maybe even call some of you into full-time ministry. We have another one of the ladies that's in our resident program who actually is moving, not quite, but almost into the empty nest stage. And she came up and said, I feel like God's called me into full-time ministry. Old, young, doesn't matter. We believe that God is calling people out and will call people up. Our vision is really big, from helping rescue children from slavery around the world to helping those in poverty here in Indianapolis with our downtown location. Supporting missionaries in foreign countries and planting churches and launching campuses, I fully believe this is just the beginning. And I cannot wait to hone this out over the next number of weeks and then bring back some of this to you. This is just the beginning. Our best days are in front of us. I fully believe it. I'm on mission. So how can you help? If you would, grab your Next Steps cards. They're in the back of they're in the bulletin. Bulletin. Thank you, Matthew. In your bulletin, Next Step, Matthew, hold up so people can see it. I forgot to grab one. So yeah, grab your Next Steps cards. Everybody grab it, pull it out, get a pen. Come on, I'll wait for you. Get it out. You got it, get it out. How can you help? I'm going to give you a couple of different ways that you can help us in this process. And as I work through these, I believe that God's even going to call some of you out to help in significant ways, or even in specific ways. Number one is this: pray. Commit to fast and pray for the team and I over the next 6 weeks. For those of you that are prayer warriors, your personal devotions, just in your personal devotion time, write it down in there. I'm going to pray for the staff. I'm going to pray for the pastor. I'm going to pray for the team as they develop some of this stuff over the course of the next few weeks. On their retreats, on their time away, as they get into the guts of this, I want to pray for them. I believe that God's even going to call some of you out to even fast and pray. And if you feel like God has put it on your heart to pray for your local church, write it on the card. I commit to pray. In my daily devotions, I'm just going to jump in. I'm going to carve out a little time to pray for the leaders. Write it down. I commit to pray. Another one might be this: give. The truth is, this vision will require more hands. We are a very generous church. I really mean that. We are above the averages. You guys are awesome. Very generous church. Great things happen. We are a very, very generous church, but we need to expand the team a bit more. I need to hire about 2 more part-time people to help develop all of this in addition to funding more programs themselves. I don't need to hire them now, but as we are building this, so I don't need applications today. When I did this at the last location, I wasn't clear enough, and we got like 40 applications. Okay, so I don't need to hire anybody today, but as we develop this, we are going to need to expand the team. And I need you to be faithful just to give. I get it. It is way more fun and cool to give to a special, ex-military special forces guy that's raiding a brothel and rescuing girls out of the sex slave trade. That's way cooler to give to. But none of that happens without hiring an admin on the back end to make sure details are being taken care of. And so we need people to be faithful to give, not just to the hipster cool stuff, which is very cool, but also give just to help make the machine run so we can do it. So as we develop this, man, if God's calling, you know what? I need to be faithful. I have not been a significant contributor to this mission. I need to do it. If God's putting that in your heart, maybe write that down too. I commit to give. I commit to be faithful to give. The third thing would be this: serve. Commit to help with what's happening here, downtown or even around the world. You have been an observer. You've been sitting on the sidelines watching ministry for so long. It's time for you to step in and taste it. See what it's like to hand somebody a meal that hasn't eaten. See what it's like. The team just got back from the mission field. You guys in Puerto Rico. See what it's like. Join one of our missions crews. Go out yourself and help people that are in need. See what it's like to walk into a children's home or whatever, all the different cool things that you guys got to do. My son just got back, and you guys both go out. And so, man, choose to go on one of the missions trips. Get plugged in, serve, help with youth ministry, children's ministry. Say, I'm in. I've observed too long. I want to be a part of it. And the fourth thing is this. I'm going to go back to the very beginning of the sermon, and I'll be done. This actually is probably one of the most important things that you can do. The world, C.S. Lewis makes the case, is full of people who are wonderful critiquers from a distance. I see all the things that are wrong. I'm going to carry an attitude. It's not wrong to want to fix things, but we carry an attitude, a distant, separate attitude of kind of grumpy critiquer. And I get it. Our system, I mean, even in my home, nobody in my family that I grew up in has less than a master's degree. Siblings and all, right? In fact, I think I'm the least educated with a master's because I haven't done, other than some specific classes, I got to catch up. Listen, I'm telling you, our whole education system is built on making distant critiquers who can tell you what's wrong with things and write a paper on it and actually do nothing. We have people with MBA degrees that couldn't lead a group of teenagers to a bathroom. I love you, but your MBA means nothing if you can't do anything with it. And we do the same thing with Christianity. You may be set in the church your whole life, and all you've really turned into is a grumpy critiquer from a distance. But you can't see the beauty in things. So one of the main things that I could ask of you, one of the most important things that Lewis talks about over and over and over again in his writing is this. Learn to see what is beautiful. Attitude. Everywhere you go, as Lewis says, learn to point out the beauty of what God is doing. From a quick Facebook or even Google review to inviting your neighbor to church, one of the most important things that you can do for us is just be positive about your church and what God is doing. I mean, as silly as this sounds, your friends seeing or hearing what you say and think about the ministries you're involved in are one of the primary deciders of whether they validate God at all. And if your non-Christian friends only hear you say, I'm miserable, I'm grumpy, I don't like, you know what they're going to think about the God that you serve? One of the most important things that you can do, I think C.S. Lewis is right, is choose to also see what's beautiful. It's not that things are unable or don't need to be improved. They always do, but learn to also see what's beautiful. From a quick Facebook or Google review to inviting your neighbor to church, I see such amazing beauty here, and I want you to see it and share it too. I do. Take the time to see and share what's beautiful. Now, the last part of that is this. I'm going to let you go. So my mom, and you guys know this, I grew up in a home. My mom was a philosophy professor at a couple of different universities. She was a professional counselor. She's a brilliant lady, way smarter than I am. My mom says that your mind, it's malleable, like you can adjust your thoughts, right? You can, and there's like little pathways. Some of you are way smarter at this stuff than I am. I'm not the psychologist, nor do I want to be. But my mom says, like, the mind maps, right? So if all you do is live grumpy and this is terrible and it's awful, you actually can see in the brain, like, thought grooves. I'm getting this wrong, I'm sure, a little bit, but like the grooves of the mind and how it works. And my mom's like, you can remap those. The number one way to remap your mind, she says, is gratitude. Gratitude. So people that struggle with massive self-focused depression, my mom says even now, even before medication, unless it's an emergency situation, one of the things that I'll prescribe to people is get up and the first thing you do is you look in the mirror and you say, what are 3 things that I am absolutely grateful for? Say it to yourself in the mirror and then write it down. And you will reshape your mind. And some of you have so many years of grooving out misery. You're destined for heaven, and you emotionally live in hell. And I believe that God is even calling some of us out to be able to take that, be able to walk in and go, by the power of the Holy Spirit, I'm going to stop living in self-loathed misery. I'm going to choose to have an attitude of gratitude. And I just said it that way. Now it sounds goofy, right? But I'm going to choose. I'm going to choose to have that attitude where I walk with gratitude. I'm going to reshape my mind. I'm going to be made into a new creature. And it begins with learning to see what's beautiful too. What are you grateful for? Maybe the most important thing you can do today on your next steps card is just pause and go, Lord, before you, what am I grateful for? And write out some of those things. So take some time before God. Just pray, Holy Spirit, speak to me. What do you want me to do? How can I commit to help the church? Pray, serve, give, whatever it might be. And then maybe just take a moment and write out the things that you are grateful for. What am I grateful for in my life? And if you have nothing that you're grateful for, that's a great place to start praying. Lord, by your grace, help me to see what's beautiful. Because Lewis is right, and I've been made into a person that just sees darkness. Awaken the beauty. Let me see what's beautiful.
We just want to thank you for watching the sermon online. If God is working in your heart, we would love to hear about it. You can go online, www.encountertrinity.com/nextstepscard. You can fill out information there. Let us know what God is doing in your heart. If you need help with anything, we would love to help. Counseling, we would love to do anything that we can to help you go to that next level spiritually. When you fill this out, it goes to one of our pastors. It is private, and we will take care of that information to the best of our ability. We love you, we care about you, and we want to see God do great things in your life. Have a great day.